Great.
Few people. And then, let's see, put together the breakfast.
Yeah.
So, Blake Moran's assistant, Lisa, we've met before.
Yeah. She's awesome. Anytime I
She is.
need something, I just call her.
Yeah, she's really good. Blake was so down to earth, like, and just listening to him talk about how all of the meetings go down in DC. And like, problem solver. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's like so down to earth, such a problem solver. So that was refreshing.
Great. I get his weekly newsletter. I don't read it, but sometimes I look at the pictures.
It was super funny actually too. So,
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
so let's see who was there. The new mayor of River Heights. I talked to him for a while.
Oh,
And Lindsay from Northland was there. And Hyde Park, what's his name?
Oh, Brian Cox.
Yep, he was there. And there's a council member from Logan, and then me and the mayor of Hiram.
Did you sign up to help at the high school?
No, I'm gonna be in Salt Lake with my husband, but it's on my list.
And then next Thursday, are you gonna go to that meeting for
Is that the fiber one?
the fiber one? Yeah. Okay.
I signed up at the high school
Okay.
for 2 hours.
I was gonna go look at that and see. I was hoping that it would fill up, but I thought I would look and see last minute what to do.
Well, I think there's still like a month for it to. I would guess most people are waiting.
Maybe it needs charged.
Hmm?
This one here? Maybe it's just not charged.
That's a long cord.
And you got that video?
Okay, who wants to go to the Ridgeline basketball game tonight? Starts at 7.
You got tickets?
I'm just throwing that out there.
That's good because Utah State's not till 9.
We're
That's right.
We're a little bitter right now.
Right.
Green
right.
Canyon,
Oh, Green
Ridgeline.
Canyon's a little bitter.
Yeah, they're
That was an intense game.
they're waiting for their
They come back.
to come back. See what happens. I'm not really passionate
So
about
who
it.
are they? Who's Ridgeline playing tonight?
It doesn't matter.
Oh.
Utah State is like 21 or in the nation.
22. They got
22.
ranked 22 today, right?
22 in the nation.
That was actually part of my council report.
What's that?
They have more wins than anybody else in the country. As of this morning.
Did you see that game Saturday?
And they're
Yeah.
only 22?
Oh, wow.
When was that at?
That last shot, oh my goodness. Bounced off the rim
Doink.
4 or 5 times before it dropped, and then he got a foul, 3-point shot with a foul, won by 2. Oh,
I was there.
that was
Tense.
sweet.
Okay. Welcome to the Providence City Council meeting, Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. We welcome you to the meeting. I'm Mayor Alder, and we have with us Jeff Nebaker, Brent Speth, Janelle Seeley, Carrie Kirk, and David Coons. So we have 100%. Let's have the Pledge of Allegiance, and Jeff Nebaker will do that for us.
If you'd please arise and repeat the pledge with me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I always ask if there's anyone in the room that would like to give a prayer. If not, Carrie Kirk has consented to do that for us.
Our eternal Father in heaven, we bow our heads and we express gratitude to live here in this free country. We're grateful for the abundance that we enjoy. We're grateful for health and strength that allows us to be here. We're grateful for citizens who've placed their trust in us, and we pray that we can earn that trust by making sound decisions and by moving our city in a direction that will be a blessing to all. Heavenly Father, we pray that thy Spirit might be with us as we discuss and as we move forward on decisions that have been made. We pray that we can always use civility and kindness as we interact. And this prayer we offer in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Let's do council reports. Does anybody want to volunteer, or shall I volunteer you? Okay.
Okay. I went at the last the last council meeting. The mayor asked me to go to the county hosted meeting with the new Utah State football coach, Bronco Mendenhall, and we heard his vision for collaboration and unity in the community, and I'm excited to have him here. And actually we were talking about the Aggie basketball season. I'd put that in my council report notes. I've been loving the Aggie basketball season. It's fun to see how many Providence residents are at games. And I just think that, the traditions on campus are a great place for a sense of community and involvement. And we're just lucky to live in a valley with that camaraderie that we find through Utah State. I also wanted to report that I spent 2 weeks between the last council meeting and now, serving the people in a remote portion of Guatemala. Traveling in the developing world makes me really grateful. As dysfunctional as our government is, it's so functional compared to other parts of the world. And it makes me especially grateful for the services that local government provide, sewer and garbage and water and roads, and just creates a lot of perspective getting out of the valley and out of the country and going to where people live so differently than we do. And then one more thing for me to report on is that at the Utah League, Janelle and I had a conversation with a couple of Nibley City Council members, and Aaron reached out to me today, and Nathan's here tonight. And I just wanted to share a little bit of report on that. They're actively pursuing a recreation center, and they have a survey that they would like Providence City to participate in. And Aaron and I had a brief conversation today. And I just thought it would be appropriate for me to share where I stand with that. And Aaron and I had a great, interaction with that. But I absolutely believe there's a gap in what is provided on the south end of the valley for recreation needs. I would love for that need to be met through either the school district, the county, or the private sector. I completely see why Nibley is pursuing a recreation center. The county doesn't have a great track record of making things happen, and Nibley does do a lot of recreation. And at this point, I'm not interested in pulling the Providence citizens into a big rec center, because it would require the funds of those who participate as well as those who don't participate. Generally, I believe that decisions are best made with information from the citizens. I don't oppose participating in the survey. I also believe that it would be slanted in favor of a recreation center, because I think those who participate would be those who want it.
And those who are indifferent probably just wouldn't take, or not in favor, just wouldn't take the time to participate in the survey. So we've had some of those conversations, mostly at the league conference. But I would love to see the county lead out, and I don't know where they are in the research that they had funded to figure out a rec center. But I just thought it'd be worth sharing that we've had those conversations and that I'm not opposed to participating in the survey. But at this point, I don't see Providence becoming actively engaged in pursuing the recreation center. So that's the last month.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for attending, by the way. It's always good to have those in the community see who helps run the city. So thank you. David, you.
Shortest report ever. It was the holidays.
It's been kind of busy for everyone, I think.
Yeah. Really nothing to report on the mosquito abatement end of things.
I don't think the mosquitoes are out there.
Not, thank goodness. We're kind of done. We're still meeting, but there's not really a lot going on. I've met with Ryan a couple of times during the month, and we had a good Christmas and New Year. Ryan and I found some neat connections between us and some old roommates and a doctor that was in town, just in our discussions about non-city stuff. So that's been kind of cool to deepen the connection.
We stayed in the same apartment at Utah State and had the same roommate.
Yep.
1 year after the other.
Yeah.
Ryan left and I showed up
I wasn't
right
going
on
to say
his
which one
heels.
of us was older.
Well, yeah, not much, and then my sister, the year before, went on a date with the same guy. So that's nothing for council report, but it made us laugh. Good
Well,
stuff.
personal connections are important.
Yeah.
That helps us be able to communicate better. So
Yep. So we're deepening that. What else? Just some emails and texts. People wanting to meet about 100 East still. I've personally decided to hold off on that until we have engineering. I feel like that's a more wise, for me, way to go to have more information to actually discuss and to that end. I don't think anything else for me.
Okay.
That's my report.
thank you. Jeff?
Just the regular responses to email, a couple phone calls, but nothing, again, major. Went to another Cache County School District calendar meeting, follow-up meeting, and they're leaning towards starting earlier in August, not going into June, 2 weeks in Christmas. I don't know how that affects anyone else but me, but there's that August 11th through 16th are sauerkraut days, which they're going to just have teachers go back earlier and maybe students go back on that August 20th when we have city council meeting. But other than that, they're leaning towards early in August for teachers, 1 day earlier for students, and don't go into June. So, and 2 weeks in anyway.
Well, in the olden days, when I was in school, if we ever even touched June, we just thought that was such a travesty.
You know, and half of them don't mind going into June, but I'm a non-Juner. I don't want to go into June.
Okay,
So that's it.
thank you. Brent?
Well, I met with Ryan and we discussed sidewalks and identified some sidewalks that could be, as he requested, that we could look at funding, putting in that would benefit the citizens of the community to work on our initiatives as a walkable, being able to connect areas together with sidewalks so there wasn't open gaps and things like that. And we had a pretty good discussion about that. We also discussed the general plan initiatives, and we felt like a lot of those initiatives were being addressed and we were achieving those initiatives with the work that's going on in the city. Felt very good about excuse me. I also met with the Blacksmith Fork Irrigation Company with Blaine Furman and Brian Olson, and we had some discussion there. They're looking for, the purpose of the meeting was to look for a new board member, and the other board member couldn't be there, but we're looking at new board member. We also had a lengthy discussion regarding the exchange of information between the happenings in the city, plats. Now, there's two aspects to this. One is what the developers are doing in the city in the area that's going to affect the irrigations, laterals, ditches, right-of-ways, and et cetera. And out of that discussion, it came forth that the city, and even though we spoke with Scarlett and letters had been sent, some of that communication hadn't got down to, well, Blaine's kind of come in a little bit later, but they would like to have a better communication with the plats, design, subdivisions, and things that are going on. And I will try and help them with that as a liaison to try and help them understand what's coming forth, what's going to happen, where it's going to affect their ditches. As an example, I told them at this point in time, the sidewalk along 100 East is being designed. It's going to cross their canal. They need to, if they want to have questions, I told them they ought to talk with Sunrise. Go in and see what's being done. See how they're crossing their canal, what they're putting in, and get informed. They would also have requested that, and I talked with Scarlett about this, and she hasn't got back to me, but they would like a signature block on a plat that, so they sign it. And I know of Spring Creek, I have signed a couple of them when I was president of Spring Creek.
Just a few adds to that. One, we're researching when a signature block can be included. If you have a right-of-way and there is a specifically recorded right-of-way, then you get the opportunity. So the water company should record their right-of-ways if they haven't.
Okay.
Because that will help to facilitate there. So there's things that the water company should do. And we also encourage, I've been working with Spring Creek, but we'd highly encourage the water companies to be able to register for Blue Stakes, and they will know at least 72 hours before anything is done to their ditch. And we would highly encourage that they sign up and register for Blue Stakes, which all utilities should be doing.
We reviewed a plat from Millville and out on the south end, and it had a signature block. And
has the right-of-way through that that parcel, but the northern parcel, it's not included because it's not, the right-of-way is not there.
does the prescriptive easement constitute anything for that?
It's recorded.
So they need to record all those.
They need to record them. If they want to have the enforcement of that, they need to record them.
Okay.
An example of that one particularly is that they have a recorded easement through that segment. When we have a recorded easement, then that
Automatically precipitates it.
the signature plat. That's why you've signed some and not others.
Yeah, because the one that I remember signing was out there below 4th East. We had a right-of-way through that. Huh?
The Singleton one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has a recorded right-of-way.
Right-of-way through that. And I do remember that. I didn't know the reason why.
I think that's the reason. We're researching, because we can't put just anybody on.
I understand.
So, yeah, that's part of our research that we've found. So.
Good. That is a project that they can go back and take a look at and work with on that.
We would also encourage them to sign up for Blue Stakes. That will become very important to them after February, especially.
Why? What's happening in February?
Well, we've currently been helping them, and likely the person that's been helping them will retire.
Is Gerald retiring?
He's talking about that. So, not an announcement, but we would highly encourage the water companies to start the Blue Stakes because their backup that we've been doing for them will end in February.
Well, Gerald's just a dang kid. How can he retire? He's not old enough to retire.
So,
Yeah.
anyway,
It's bad when the old people start looking
Old.
young.
Anyway,
It
I know
is
that-
true, Kathleen.
I know that Spring Creek is working on getting their blue sticks up to speed, and it takes a bit of time, so we would encourage Blacksmith Fork. to-
Good, I'll take that back to them and encourage that. Uh,
Brent, let me just tell you, if they're going to record that, then it needs to go through a title company too. So the title company will have to research that so that it's all official. They can't just go
Good.
say that it's
Well,
theirs,
we'll have
so.
to go through the process correctly then, for sure. I will mention that to him, bring that back to him. That's why we're having this dialogue, so we can all get, so we can get our ducks in a row and get things taken care of. So, okay, we can do that. I also work with him as a liaison for projects the city is doing. I've talked to him about what LeGrand Johnson's doing down on 3rd South, and that eventually that will come up and cross the highway and cross, I don't know if it'll be under or above their irrigation line that's coming down 3rd South. That's Blacksmith Fork going to Seth's place, and I talked to him about that so they'd be aware that that's happening and on board. And then the canal crossing out on 100 East, what is it, about between 2nd and 3rd South? Is that where it's at, or I can't remember. Anyway, I just know where it's at. I don't know the addresses. Anyway, all right, I told him I'd work as a liaison. So that's about all I have.
Thank you. Janelle?
I've had a very busy last week. I feel like you hit January and everybody seems to shake off the dust of the holidays and go full speed. Last week, I met with Carrie and Ryan, kind of to sync up on some of the things going on in the city. Wednesday, I had a Cache County Library Board meeting. We're looking to do an amendment to the agreement between River Heights, Providence, and Cache County, and they should have a draft for the board to look at in April on updates to that. And the library has been kind of working half open, half closed this week, because they're painting the inside of the library this week. So they were supposed to be done today, but they've extended their closure till tomorrow. But if you get on and reserve books, you can pick them up at the curb. They'll bring them to you. So you can still get books, you just can't go inside. The library, and then Thursday I spent some time with the Communities That Care South Cache County Coalition. And they basically are an organization that has been spearheaded by the health department, but they are working on prevention of risky behaviors with adolescents. They collect data from surveys done through the school district, and then they try to correlate and get all the different entities to pool their resources and try to help the youth. So their current focus, what they're trying to do for prevention, is focusing on vaping and marijuana use. So anyway, I'll continue to work with Natalie Tippett there at the health department on that. Friday, I went to the ribbon cutting for the new Connect building, which was formerly called the Cache Valley Transit District. It's not CVTD anymore, it's Connect. It'll probably take us a really long time to remember that.
As long as it's been in place so far.
Right. So they've rebranded it because it isn't just buses. You know, they have their pool service and their loop service and several different transit things. But it was actually a really nice event that they held. The facility, we got to tour it, and you know, they highlighted the board members and the work that they did to put that online. But it was a $45 million facility that they built, debt-free, no bonds. All of it was either things that they just saved up for, or they matched grants. Worked closely with Congressman Blake Moore and Senator Chris Wilson to get that funding. So that's always nice. One of the things that I actually really liked, the remarks that Congressman Moore made, he was comparing the budget in Washington, D.C. to a pizza, and he broke out all the slices, and he said, basically, I'm left with a pepperoni, basically, to figure out what I can allocate to people. By the time you take care of Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security and all these different services. So And he also made the statement, his initial statement, which I think I'm going to borrow and probably use forever. But he said, I'm just going to start by saying I'm not as bad as everyone says I am, and I'm really not as good as everybody says I am, but I'm doing the best I can. So I think we can all identify with that. And then I was able to go have a meeting afterwards with several of the elected officials in the valley, and it was great. I feel like we're well represented in Washington. Congressman Moore is a hard worker. He's a problem solver, and he's so down to earth. And it was just refreshing to hear all the things that he's actively working on to represent the citizens of Utah. And kind of got up to speed with some of the state representatives of what's coming into the legislative session. Anyway, it was just a really good networking opportunity and discussion that I had there. Monday, we had our legislative policy committee. So we ramp up for the legislative session to start on Tuesday next week. And just some of the things that they have kind of given us a heads up on to look for in the housing section. The governor has completed his transition. He's been inaugurated for his second term. And his goal is to have 35,000 new owner-occupied single-family starter homes by 2028. Which is a lofty ambition, I'd like to say.
Yeah.
But one of the ways that they're looking to accomplish that is with a moderate income housing plan. You know, we've had before, I don't even know how many choices are in the cafeteria plan, a lot of them.
Probably about 35.
And one of the things that they're proposing is that if you're willing to do a density bonus overlay in your city, it can count towards like 3 of those options. So I think they're trying to give cities options of, I think like maybe like six different density options that you could put an overlay on a city to meet those moderate income housing requirements. They said if you implemented one by May, you'd get an automatic pass on your moderate income housing plan, which is a pretty big carrot, but
I could hear Scarlett cheering.
I don't know. I feel like it always comes with its trade-offs, right? So
Right.
it's definitely something to consider. But the other thing that they're looking at to try and meet some of these housing objectives and goals from the governor's office, this one I really didn't like, but that state land, any surplus state land is not subject to city code. And so cities cannot have any input on the zoning of state
As long as
land
it's owned by the state.
if it's owned by the
If
state.
they sell it,
So they can
then it comes to.
then it would have to be annexed in or fall under the laws of county or whatever. Right.
Well, for instance, the piece on the highway that's USU's would be state-owned land.
Hmm.
But if they sold that to a developer, the developer's subject to it. But if the state were to build the housing, then they would be exempt.
If the state builds the housing, they get to choose the density and whatever they want. And because it's not within the city jurisdiction, the city can't collect any property tax on it. And the city still services the infrastructure, like the roads and the sewer and the water and all those things. So
has the state done that?
they said that is their number one housing talking point and objective going into the legislative
Yes,
session.
they do it. They do it regularly with USU on-campus housing would be an example. So they would do that. I mean, they're in the business of having I mean, these universities are state-owned and would have state housing. So you could have state housing like that placed on that farm.
The tree farm.
Yeah, if you wanted, they could do that without any kind of property tax or impact that we could evaluate. But we wouldn't, I mean, it's not in Don Province in Millville, and we don't have the sewer to compensate for it, so it'd be really interesting to see what they could do.
Yeah, anyway, they're trying to get creative to meet these objectives and these goals. One of the things, a couple of the other things they were trying to deal with is having cannabis subject to local odor ordinances, which I'm not really sure how they would implement that either, because I mean, we've talked about in our nuisance ordinance, it's such an objective thing. How do you even codify that? I don't even know how they would enforce that. Yeah,
Some of the
subjective.
people that, some of the cities that had cannabis growing areas, they all, I was surprised at how many people piped up and said, yeah, it really stinks bad. I don't know how you would mitigate that at all,
Yeah.
unless you put them in grow houses that are totally covered and the air is filtered somehow.
Fluoridation of water is one of the things they talked about, and they talked about we've had code blue centers. You know, when the temperature drops below a certain point, they're looking to add red to that, and there's lots of different things in play with homelessness. One of the things that I thought might affect Providence, and I honestly don't know what kind of issue if we have a lot of people that camp up Prov Canyon or not, but that they're going to restrict camping on state land, and figure out how to enforce that which I think forestry is federal land. I think they're just trying to come up with solutions to solve problems, but I think one of the issues is that some of the solutions domino into something else, and they just create more problems. Anyway, it's not the holidays anymore. It's go time. Oh, I do have a couple other things. Sorry, I thought I was gonna be done. On the 10th of February, Ridgeline High School has a government panel, and I've participated in it the last several years. It's really cool. I feel like the students ask lots of questions. Some of them are kind of goofy, some of them are insightful, but I think it's a good opportunity to help them kind of like see what we do and understand government, how it works. I will be out of town, but if Sarah Hall, the teacher, sent out an email to everyone. I checked, y'all were on it. If you have an hour to spare or two on the 10th of February, she would love to have you in her panel. I'll be and then I have a fiber meeting next week in Bountiful to coordinate with a whole bunch of cities across the Wasatch Front in the state that have city-owned fiber and internet services. So that's all.
Thank
For
you.
real.
For real, so. Okay. As you can see, our council members are busy talking with people and making sure that we're covered. And part of my job is to make sure that I am in the community and people know what Providence is doing, and to help other people out so that we're seen as someone that is pro Cache Valley and doing all that we can to make things better. Just wanted to remind everybody that Sauerkraut Days are going to be in August, and remind the council that I would like each of you to sit on one of the committees. So I stopped and talked with Nicole today, and we're going to get started on looking at what kind of committees we have and who will need to serve on those to help make sure that the people in this community know that we care and that we want to have a successful event. Because part of my goal when I became mayor was to have people feel like they were part of a larger community. And so I'd like us all to be working toward that. I went to a meeting. Logan is going to be doing a general plan. And so they're starting on that process. And it's interesting to see issues that people perceive for Logan, and going to those meetings helps me to see what they're doing or not doing and what we might be able to include or take away from what we're doing. So we'll see how that process goes, but it's interesting to see how other cities are doing their general plan. And I don't know how we would operate if we didn't have our general plan in place, because there's so many things that we can go in and say, oh, this is what the plan says that we're going to do, so we need to to do that and not deviate. You know, there's a lot of talk about sidewalks and how we have sidewalks to nowhere. But Ryan and I were talking one day, and he made the comment that the sidewalks that we have now are an opportunity for us to finish those sidewalks and to make a more walkable community. So when people are complaining about sidewalks to nowhere, those are just sidewalks that are waiting to be completed. And since they're there and we can find some money to complete them, that's what we want to do, because it makes our citizens safer. It makes our community more walkable. And I honestly, I think one of these days we're going to have to be walking our community more than we do now, as we look at the expensive things and how people are living their lives. So please share with people who say to you, we don't want sidewalks to nowhere. Those are just sidewalks waiting to be completed. It's over the holidays, it was a busy time, and I appreciate the council stepping in for me as I was out of town for a while. But thank you for all the work that you do. Let's close that and go to the approval of the minutes of December 18th, 2024. So I will entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we close this portion of the council
That we
reports.
approve.
That
We approve the minutes.
minutes.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I wasn't very clear, maybe.
Okay. That we approve the minutes from
December
December
18th.
18th. I was going to say 17th. December 18th, 2024.
Okay, so we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a practice of letting our community speak if they would like to bring anything up that isn't on the agenda to give us information. It's not something we can discuss, but if you have something you want to say, we will let you speak. Hal? Just remind you that we do take compliments as well.
I just have a couple of questions. I've noticed around town that there's plastic bags over some of our fire hydrants, something I haven't seen before. Does anybody know what the
Plastic
deal on
bags
that
are when
is?
they're not in service, so we would be repairing those.
Oh, those are so to designate them for repair?
They're designated that we're working on them to repair. So you've probably seen a couple. We don't have very many, but they indicate that they're not currently in service.
Oh, okay. The other thing, I think y'all know where I live, down on the corner up there. If you go down the street go down my side street to the north, those new houses that they're building down there, that 55 and older area. There's two houses actually on, let's see, it'd be
100 East.
First East, yeah. That have an old house in between them, Lenhart's house. You know where I mean. Those two new ones, they're gigantic houses. I've had a couple of neighbors ask me if those are actually single family homes,
Yes.
because they're concerned that they kind of look like they could be an apartment, or they could be a rooming house or something, or they could try and change the zoning for something like that. But
Zoning is a single family house.
okay, so there's no issue there at all.
So you can go
They're
back and
single
report.
houses and that's it.
Yep.
Okay, well, like I say, a couple of my neighbors asked me to ask, so thank you.
Thanks, Hal. Anyone else? Nathan?
Are there rules? Do I have a time limit? 3 minutes, 10 minutes?
5 minutes.
My name is Nathan Lowerson. As Councilmember Kirk talked about, I'm with Nibley City Council. Just thank you, Mayor Alder and council members, for all you do, sacrifices you make. I'm from Nibley. I grew up in Nibley, but I feel like Providence was actually where I grew up. I went to school here. I spent time in your fields. On your, yeah,
Trespassing, huh?
yeah, a little bit. But I was raised a little bit in Providence. I'm a proud Providence panda. And I visit a lot of friends' houses. Now I just feel like I drive my kids there now. But thanks for being a good neighbor and for making a community that I feel safe to have my kids go to and that I grew up in, and being a nice neighbor to my beloved Nibley. As Councilmember Kirk alluded to tonight, I came tonight simply to request and invite you as a council to join Nibley and some of our fellow cities in the southern half of the valley in the distribution of a survey that will allow citizens to provide their input on indoor recreation space. Let me be clear, we're not asking you to join us. We're not asking you to spend any money. We're not asking you to ask your citizens to vote on anything at this point. We're simply just giving them an opportunity to give feedback so that we as a city can make a good decision, but maybe even us as a county and a valley can make a good decision. As we talked about, there's kind of a gap or a need that we found. We're not actively pursuing an indoor recreation space. We're actively pursuing the feasibility of that space. And so this data that we are collecting, we feel is important to include your community because they are likely to use it or not, right? We'd like to know about our neighbors and what they'd like to see. And that helps us determine whether or not we can, as a city, do something about it, or if we need to go bigger or just decide that someone else should be doing it. And so we're simply collecting the data. Considerations, we've partnered with a firm and we created the survey already. I think we've shared that with Councilmember Kirk. Happy to share that with you tonight. I have a copy. But the data, the considerations for you to think of, the data is yours. If you participate, the firm that we're working with will give you the data on what Providence residents say, and you can do whatever you want with it. The data from the aggregate of the communities will be public, that Nibley City is producing. And we think that that's valuable information for both the public and private sector and anyone in the valley wanting to know what people want and feel that they need to increase their mental health, their sense of community, the demand for indoor recreation space. I've driven to North Logan about 7 times this week already. And there's a lot that we've talked about that we can accommodate. As Councilmember Kirk talked about, Cache County is also now put aside some funding for some feasibility, but we'd like to start collecting that data sooner. We think that it would be helpful. And I think opting out or not participating sends a message to our residents. So they will be asking similar questions to us. It sounds like the firm that we're working with will be pretty involved with what they're doing as well. So we just figure let's get in ahead of the game instead of waiting. Nibley, Hiram, Wellsville, Mendon have agreed to participate, and they've shared reasons of why they want to agree, and most of those have to deal with they've asked their citizens and they see that there's possible interest and they want to be able to make data-informed decisions. We ourselves have been working on it for almost a decade, it feels like. So we're ready to just ask the questions so that we can decide. Like I said, VCBO, the firm we're working with, will process the data and share it with all the participating communities, and you can do what you want with that. We're thinking for like 3 weeks. I come tonight, I know I'm not running your agenda or anything, but I come tonight because we're looking to try to have a lot of that data collected by March. And so for about 3 weeks or so in February, we'd like to see if you'd like to participate in that. And that's kind of the timeline we're on with the other cities as well. So ideas of how you can distribute this would be through a city newsletter, utility messaging, social media, all the website, the way that you communicate to your community, simply taking that and sending it that way. Some communities are text messaging, and we as a city and the firm are actually happy to help distribute as well. Mendon expressed interest in us kind of helping them because they don't have a lot of those processes built yet. So just in kind of closing, we want to be able to give citizens an answer of to why or why not we as a city will not be or will be pursuing indoor recreation space. Facilities like this cost way too much to guess, which is why we are sending out these surveys. Data, as you've talked about, makes smart decisions. You talked about sense of community and the purpose of mental and physical health that these kind of spaces can serve us, and the tradition that can sometimes form around those. But I think also as elected officials, it shows that we care. and that we listen to our citizens. And it's our duty to ask for their input before we make decisions and to gather that data. So I know I'm not on an agenda and you can't limit your discussion tonight, but I guess I'm asking if you're willing as a council to support that. And if so, we're happy to come and do a formal presentation with you about what it looks like. We're happy to have committee discussions with your staff and our staff if that works, or simply give it to you and have you send it out. So those are the things that we're asking. And again, thank you for all you do. It's really nice to be a part of this community and have you as a neighbor. So thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
I'll give this example survey to you.
Thank you.
Let me just ask you one thing on the survey. Does it ask if the citizens are willing to be taxed for this?
Yeah,
So that's part of the
I
question.
does have a question.
Okay.
I did get a copy.
Yeah,
But yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
There are questions that, and if there are some that you want to tweak or others that you'd like to ask specific to Providence, that can be arranged.
I just have a question if you know. Do you know the time frame of the county? I know that they got funded in their wraps. They have a limited time. They could use that. Do you know? And if you don't, that's okay. I just was curious if you know their time frame.
They're way behind us, but they're speeding it up. It sounds like they've sought who to help them, like we have with a firm. But that's all I know. Chad would know more. Chad Wright.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and close that portion of the meeting and go to item number 2. Ordinance 23-2024-PCC 6-2-8, parenthesis 1, winter parking amendments. Providence City Council will review, discuss, and may take action on an ordinance that seeks to amend PCC 6-2-8, parenthesis 1, changing winter parking hours or restrictions for commercial districts. So, Ryan, do you want to speak to this?
I think the applicant's here, right?
I'm not the applicant.
Well, I was hoping you were the applicant.
We've
Yeah.
had this come up on our agenda a couple of times.
The applicant told me on the phone that he would be here, and we have a tradition that if the applicant not
It's
be
not
present,
here, we
that
don't do it.
we don't discuss it at that point. So that's why I was really hoping that was me. I apologize to misrepresent you. So, so
Well, you'll have that opportunity when he is actually here, because if the applicant isn't here, they don't get to tell their side of the story. And so
because he would be the one to propose, we would normally have the normal thing would be for him to propose what his
Why he wants to do it.
proposal is. He's paid the application fee. He is the applicant to propose that. We do have some data on showing the width. But anyway, if you want me to continue, but that's normally where we're at. So
He's paid an application fee twice now.
no, just one, and we've delayed it. This is the third delay in it. Normally after
the
this
last
one,
time we delayed it, he knew he was not going to be here. So we
Right.
just delayed that. We're happy to take your public comment if you'd like, but without his feedback.
Yeah, sure.
So,
Well, so my name's Richard Johnson. I own South Valley Family Dental just right down the street here.
you own, I'm sorry, tell me.
South Valley Family Dental.
Okay.
So it's on Spring Creek Parkway, just a couple blocks north of here, or block north, not very far. Anyway, we do use street parking for employees as we come to work. And so with the ordinance as it sits now at 9 a.m., I believe, right, is the
9 a.m. is
current,
correct.
So, we're typically getting there between 7:30 and 8. And then part of this comes from, we just, don't have enough parking in general in our spot, especially since the condos have been built next door. We have a lot of people from the condos that park in our parking lot. So just in general, we don't have enough parking. And so we do use street parking, but we're getting there between, 7:30 and 8 a.m., but then getting tickets on the road because we're there before the parking restrictions. So it was my understanding anyway that yeah, this amendment was hoping to maybe change that to 8 a.m. possibly.
Oh,
I'm not sure.
Yeah, the proposed amendment is to change it from 9 to 8.
Yeah. So, so anyway,
Okay.
I'm in support of that. I think that would be very helpful for us as business owners. I speak for myself, as well as the others in that same complex, Spring Creek Dental, South Valley Eye Care, and Providence Family Medicine. Each of us use, have a couple from each of our buildings that do use street parking, to just allow a little more parking in our parking lot. So.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, so we will table item number 2 until we have our applicant here. So,
I would just point out, the 2 storms we did have, they started about 8 o'clock. And for us to be able to plow, it's impossible for us to get it done. And his is a little different, but the applicant is on a dead end street and it does take his time to get there. So I just keep in mind, that the plow, when a vehicle is on there, totally,
we're still going to ticket.
we have to.
Doesn't matter what the ordinance says. It's
Well,
it's
we'll follow
either
the
that
ordinance
time or if it's not snowing.
if we're plowing.
It's not a plowable event.
Yeah, so, anyway, it just so happens to be that the 2 storms we did have, and sure hope we have more,
Started at 8 and ended
but they started at 8 and ended at like 10, and so we got plows out.
I was
But,
taking note because of this agenda item.
I mean, we're like, what do we do?
Yeah,
If they park in there by 8 o'clock, what do we do?
Yeah.
because we can't get to it soon enough.
Can't get to it.
Yeah. Okay, well.
Is there a way to contact him and say, we've tabled this? This is our, second, third time we've done this?
It's the
Is
second
he gonna
time.
withdraw his application or is he gonna
I-
show up?
He showed up once and he thought it was on the agenda, but there was a miscommunication and it did not get on the agenda. So he did not get a chance to talk about it.
I don't,
The next time it was on the agenda, he knew that he couldn't be here. And so,
tell us your name.
John Cartsoni.
okay,
There's
this
the
is our
applicant.
applicant.
Thank you. I'm glad you showed up.
I thought we started at 7. Forgive me.
No, 6 o'clock. Well,
We were hoping to be done by 7, but.
That's early.
So-
Okay.
so John is here. He is the applicant and would be interested for him to make his presentation. I believe he was supposed to have a 45-minute presentation on the pluses and minuses, but if he would boil that down to 3 minutes, we'd certainly appreciate it.
May I?
Y- The agenda item is up. I was just getting ready to close it.
Oh, my
So-
heavens. Forgive me, please. Well, thank you for hearing me out, Mayor.
So talk to us
Council
about why
members.
you want to
Pardon me?
talk to us about.
Simply, I'd like to make the amendment change so my employees can park on the road and leave parking open for the patients that come in and pay the bills and the clients. Parking is a problem.
And your business is what?
Central Billing Office, we collect
Okay.
medical bills and help patients pay their medical bills for our physicians. We've got quite a few employees over there. And with all the doctors around there, everyone struggles for parking. So we have the street and it makes great sense to be able to use the curb parking and keep the parking spaces open for clients and patients. We have senior people that come in to pay their bills, and I want them to have the quickest access to our building. So it's a safety thing, partially convenience, because I want it to be more convenient for the clients to come in. My employees understand that we're there, just like all of us are in our jobs, to serve the people that are our clients and our citizens. So my employees, I request them to park on the street unless they're working late at night. If they are, I want them to have good lighting
but I always have parking spaces open for clients is my intent.
And so what you're asking for on this is that we change the winter parking hours? Or, yeah, the winter park
Winter parking restriction.
from 9 to
It-
8.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
currently from 1 to 9, and the applicant is asking for it to be 1 to 8. Is that correct?
I'm asking for it to be 1 to 8 throughout the time frame of, I believe, November 15th to April 15th. But in the event that we have snow that's measurable, we understand on those days, we will not park on the street until 9 o'clock. But any other day with no current snowfall, I would like the latitude to allow my employees to park on the street at 8 a.m.
Okay.
And does that work well for everybody? It's my intention is to have the flexibility to still support the snow removal team.
Whenever we're doing snow removal, we need the vehicles off of the road. I mean, that's our issue that we have, is we need the vehicles off the road. The 2 storms we've had, we mentioned but before you got here, but the 2 storms we had started at about 8 o'clock. And so at that point, if it's going to snow that day, we would need them to be off until the snow plows complete theirs. The fortunate, unfortunate, the issue is with this little stretch is it's a dead end street at the current time. It's planned to maybe connect in the future, which will change it. But our prioritization of roads is from heavy traffic roads. We try to get the heavy traffic ones, which are around the school. That's why the school has the exception it does, because we're trying to get that done first, and because they start at 8 o'clock. You know, on one street, that's one thing. The applicant is commercial areas, which then dominoes into a fairly substantial portion of the town. And if the snow starts at 8 o'clock, for us to be able to clear it, and I didn't pick this year when to have it come, but it just happened to be that the 2 storms we had measurable snowfall came starting about 8 o'clock, and we just can't we just don't have time to get it done, and we need access to be able to get that snow onto the park strip, and if a car's in the way, we just can't do it. The other thing is this street, I believe, is a 29-foot wide road, 29?
I believe so.
And at that point, with cars on both sides, it is inaccessible to a fire truck.
Emergency equipment.
So at this point, we would say it's already illegal year-round to park both on both sides of the street, because it restricts the ability, and we believe that safety for response of medical and fire is important enough that we need at least 20 feet. That would only allow parking on it at maximum one side of the street anyway. So that's probably the actual rule. So currently the rule is not being enforced to that extent. So we have been giving latitude, but we're asking that you know, at this point we need to make sure that the fire truck can respond and do that. And a little bit ultra sensitive to that with the fires in California. You imagine if those trucks and the cars that are there, we're asking for understanding that we're just trying to do our job. However you decide to do that, we're just trying to make sure that we're providing that service, both plowing, EMS and fire.
Okay. Anything you want to add to that?
I know a fire engine and a ladder truck can get down that road. I'm surprised that we allowed the road if it's that narrow.
I would say that I'm surprised that we'd even allow parking on the street because it's narrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
It's good to know. I mean, this is a learning.
Yes, it can go, it can drive it, but it can't park and put it out because the bases have to go out. And if there's consistent parking, there is no place in order for the fire truck to stop and to put out a fire, because it takes 20 feet to do that.
Sure. Well, my request goes back to presently the ordinance states you are not allowed to park on the street, on the curb, from 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. from November 15 to April 15. I respectfully request a variation from that time frame when there is no snow, or it's not snowing presently, and there's no plowing going on, that on that road on 465 North, my employees are permitted, or all employees are permitted to park at 8 a.m. But if there is a measurable amount of snowfall, we understand that we must immediately revert back to the original ordinance, no parking until 9 a.m. And thank you very much. Any questions for me?
I have a question.
Yes,
for
sir.
you. So, do you own the building?
I own 75% of it.
Okay. Since, in my estimation, the parking is not sufficient for your business, you own 75% of it. Should you and your partners be looking to offer more purchased land and provide more parking? If this is a deterrent to your business, along with your other business partners that own that building, should that be the step that you're taking? Because it looks like to me that the solution, the long-term solution, is to create more parking rather than trying to use a few hours of city parking. I drive down that road a few times, and the cul-de-sac's hard. It's got cars parked all the way around the cul-de-sac, and you know, for a larger vehicle to turn around down there or anything like that, it's complicated. And as I looked at it, I thought the solution here is not in the city's court. The city's in the building owner's court to provide more parking. However you may have to do that is consider creating more parking. That's my question.
If I was in the position to buy land for parking, I would do it. That's not an option. I've considered purchasing a van and having one of my employees carpool our guests to both protect, to help our employees and the environment. But there's a lot of dynamics to creating that. We've evaluated that entire area, cobblestone project, as like similar to planned unit development. So there's access to the parking lots on either side of 465 North. We do move over on the far side, on the north side of the buildings, and take some of that parking if it's available. So I have investigated or evaluated the options that are before me and have asked members. I sometimes will park on the other side. I've looked at carpooling, and this is my third option. I want to follow the rules, and that's the only reason I'm asking. I don't want our employees to get citations, and I don't want to hamper the efforts of our snow removal team or our firefighters ever, or our police officers.
How many employees do you have?
I have some that work at home, so we have 38 employees. In that building, I've got about 24.
So when the buildings were built, we didn't require enough parking.
And from a developer standpoint, I understand. I mean, we have girls that ride their bikes in summer, and that's great. They love to bike. We have a great community that supports some bike trails, good traffic laws. So we take what avenues are there, but I wouldn't want them to ride their bikes in the winter. And that's I don't want to take up all the time, so forgive me, but there is a detention pond there. I've talked to my builder that we need to go ahead and get it approved through you guys to put parking on that detention pond, but I don't see that happening for at least a year. And do you know where that is, sir, Mr. Speth?
Is that the end of the cul-de-sac?
Drawing on the computer.
Yeah, grand. This is a detention pond.
Right.
What we would do is go ahead after it's surveyed, engineered, put in those big half yellow tubes that they put
Sure.
in all the Walmarts.
Yeah.
So they can keep the water in there. So am I looking at other avenues? I am. I'm doing the best I can with what I have at my fingertips.
Is the detention basin up on the north side? Is this one in that same category of consideration?
I only know about this one, Ryan. What other one are you referring
Top, I'm trying to
Oh,
make.
yeah, I have not addressed that with Randy at all.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's a good idea.
Just curious that it would stretch the parking there for,
That would probably provide all the parking that you need.
And our town is just going to grow. It doesn't matter what we do. We're going to have growth. And with the, eventually, if that cul-de-sac goes through, those apartments have been improved and the commercial buildings from, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, from Logan City on the
Logan
west
City.
side.
the side of that. So the property, the boundary line between cities is across that. So
Okay.
there is that potential.
Yeah.
Is
So I will,
Randy-
I'm sorry, go.
Is Randy Nim your partner?
Yes. I'm a much shorter speaker than Randy.
Thank you.
There's a diagonal piece there that kind of goes behind the buildings. Tell me the status of what's with that piece of property? Is that
That
some
corner?
part of, well, south or lower than the detention pond? There's kind of that when you got your arrow on. Could that ever be squared up? And there's a canal that goes through there.
Well,
There
that
is a canal.
piece,
That's something I'd have to look at with the other owners. I think one of our very large developers in the valley owns that.
A large developer in the valley does own that.
Yeah.
And I
He has
think that,
plans.
there's
I think
also irrigation that goes along the black line. Oh,
On the city boundary.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
the
if
city
that's
boundaries, the
even
black
used.
line.
it may not be used anymore.
I do believe that
Yeah, I
there's
don't
a
think
planned
that's
road
used.
that would connect a planned road from 465 down to golf course that I think that there is, or at least I've seen potential concepts that show a road along there. So this could go through, but it could also become a T and come down. So that's why I was pointing to the north one instead of here, because that might be inside of a road someday. I don't know that.
I'll have to talk to you about that another day. But it's a good idea.
Okay.
Thank you for hearing
If
me
we have more
out.
questions, we'll call you up.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so basically what he's, Ryan, do you want to say anything else?
I think I've said my piece.
Okay. Discussion from the group, questions?
I just have a few thoughts on parking. Number one, this highlights our need for parking, right? And the state is trying to restrict the number of parking stalls that we're allowed to require per development. So this is clearly one of
Where's
those
our-
examples that we're like,
Well, when I heard him
trying to
talking about
maximize
that,
the land use, right? But at the same time, there's practical reasons why we have the rules that we do. The other thoughts that I have about parking is when we initially discussed the changes to the winter parking adjustments and the amendments that we made last time, the two things that I feel like we talked about the most were the schools and the businesses. I feel like what has been proposed language-wise doesn't really reflect the application. There's nothing in the wording about measurable snow, what that is. I don't think that the language is clear enough about if there's an active storm, no one's allowed on the streets anywhere, no matter what time of day it is. So I don't think those things are reflected in the amendments that make it pretty clear. But I also feel like, we need our businesses and we need them to run well. And that's really all they're trying to do is run well. Anyway, I think we'd have to change the language. I don't think it reflects what if we were to make changes, we would have to change what was proposed to something that actually reflects all of the information that was presented in the application, I think, and the discussions that I feel like there was emails in the information that we were given that were back and forth between the applicant and city staff. So I think if we change something, it couldn't be just what has been put before us. And then I think advertising to your clients and your, I think that is kind of a thing that they'd have to understand all of the parking regulations, right? Because even residents sometimes park on the street when they go to a business, right? It's not just employees that will use on-street parking. And so having them aware of the modifications and the exemptions and all of those things, I think is a burden on the business owners. If there's an exception for a certain section of the city. I mean, it's like if they come in to check in for an appointment, you probably want to say,
Are you parked on the
are
street?
you parked on the street? And
Go
let
move
them,
your car.
and kind of let them know, because it would be different than anywhere else in the city except the schools, right? Which have striped on-street parking by the school, well, in the park, right? Is that those are only two places that have striped
Yes,
on-street parking?
they are striped and at least an 80-foot wide road.
Yeah.
Or an 80-foot wide right of way. We have about a 65-foot wide road on Providence Elementary. So it's significantly wider. I mean, we're 20 to 40 feet wider in those
In those areas, right?
Well, people are going to assume they can park there unless it's painted red.
Yes, I agree.
And if somebody else is parked there, if there are other cars parked there, I'm going to say, well, I can park there. That's what people assume, unless it's painted red, or there are signs that say "Don't park here." So,
I
We-
think, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I think that street parking is currently used a lot, but I think there will be more and more restrictions with on-street parking. So I think this might be a short-term Band-Aid. It was brought to the council this summer to restrict on-street parking at certain road widths everywhere year-round, because it's a safety issue. And as a council, our first concern, our first responsibility is the safety of citizens. And so much of the city has become reliant on street parking, that I mean, I don't have a clear vision of what to do for this, because we like to work with citizens. We like to come up with clever ways to make it work for everyone within the parameters that we're given. But I do think that an awareness that narrow streets, being reliant upon narrow streets for parking is probably short term, like less than 10 years, like maybe less than 5. As more and more traffic comes to our city, the less cars we can have parked on streets. And so even making an adjustment now doesn't mean that in the future this will continue, parking on the street will continue to be an option for here and other places in the city where people have become reliant on the street, which it is not intended for parking. It's intended for driving, and that's why it's allowed at that width. Anyway, I think it's a really tricky situation.
I'm just curious about who owns the parking in places like that. Is it part of the business? Is central billing office that whole building or half that building? And with 20 something employees working there, I was counting about 35 parking spots around that building. And can they be claimed? These are for this business. These are for this business. People in the apartments maybe shouldn't be using them. I
They
don't
use
know.
them.
Yes, come
Well,
up.
that's what was mentioned earlier.
Come up to the.
It's a different
That's,
area.
oh, that's up above.
That's like across our parking lot.
Forgive me.
Around your building.
I
Yeah.
I was confused. My information was poor, I guess. That's all commercial. There is a plan down the road for another developer to build apartments west where those blue, you may not be able to see them there, but all, yeah, those sheds, that will all be developed eventually. And to the south of us, probably multifamilies. But each of you would probably know more about that than me. That's the hearsay I hear. My building, we have our employees. There's also a medical building or a medical suite next to us. And there's 4 other buildings, all full of physicians providing medical care to the citizens and a pharmacy. So there is direction on how many parking stalls are available. The 8 stalls in front of each building are designed for that building. And then employees and patrons, if you will, on the outside areas. Common area parking. I'll speak loud as I walk away. This is common. These 4 areas here for my building. These 4 are for this suite. These 8 go to these 2 suites here. Each of these buildings is set up the same. Mr. Nebuch, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I apologize for being confusing.
No, you're not.
Mr. Speth.
Are you representing any of the other businesses in
Yes.
your request? Because are they, the 4 parking stalls assigned to them are not adequate for the medical office and the others you're talking about?
I spoke to the majority of the other building owners or tenants and asked them if they would support this. They said, yeah, we think it's a great idea because Dr. Hubbard right there, he parks on the road, leaving area open for his patients to come in. The people on the north side of the road, those employees will typically park on the street. And thank you, Mayor, because most of us assume that curb parking is at our disposal. And thank you, Ryan, for enlightening us to some of the hurdles that the city endures. So it's a challenge, and I appreciate you hearing me out. Any other questions?
Okay, let us discuss some more and we'll call you up if we need to.
I guess I do have one question. How many of those stalls are for reserved for handicap parking?
The appropriate amount per the state law, I believe on my section, of handicap here and on this building, handicap there. Each of them has
So you
each
got-
8. There's an additional 1 for handicap. And it's right next to the handicap ramp. No builder would try to build without following those rules ever.
Yeah.
Nor would it be passed by the inspectors.
Well, they're built to code.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
that's
has to
what-
be. That's just,
You built it to the code that was given to you at the time for whatever application you put in.
Sure.
So
Are you owner of other buildings other than the one you're
no.
Okay. Does Randy control those himself with his partner, Sorensen?
Randy controls some of them, but I don't want to throw numbers out without being accurate. There are a percentage that are independently owned, like at mine.
Okay. My concern is it sounds like the whole situation needs to have parking expanding.
Yes.
And it sounds like to me that, and I don't have a solution, but it would be, to me, wise if all of them came together that have a parking issue and see, rather than putting a burden on you or another doctor's office or whatever, if you came together and see what you could do to expand parking so that what it sounds like to me, on-street parking is not the solution. A very temporary at best, especially if it becomes a through street. If it connects to Logan, with the width of that road, that's just, I just think you need to look, myself, at coming together with your other owners and expanding your parking somehow.
Can I comment there? Can I respond to that?
Yes.
That's, to me, is the
I think
solution.
that's a fair thing looking at this particular parcel, but the other gentleman who commented, it's not an option to buy more property when you're in like a fully developed area. I mean, as I looked at this initial application, I thought, well, this, to me, from a bird's eye view, I think, well, this looks like it has plenty of parking. So I don't see really the need to put those cars on the street. Whereas other areas, we hadn't heard from any other business owners except this applicant until it was brought onto the applicant. So having other medical people show up and then looking at their facilities, do they have an option to buy more property and expand their parking?
South. That's all open
Where's open?
right there.
No, that's for that particular area.
Well,
but the businesses that were represented on the other are on Spring Creek Parkway and they're in a different spot.
well, we're not talking about them right now, are we?
Well, kind
I
of.
thought- 'cause
They have the
that's-
same situation. He made a public comment in support of this thing.
Now, on Spring Creek Parkway, keep in mind that Spring Creek Parkway also has bike lane with multimodal, which would prohibit it from on-street parking anyway. And the state is preparing. I think they talked about
Yeah, they talked about the
preparing to
LPC.
do that. We haven't enforced. We've taken a soft enforcement on bike lanes, but coming down the road, the state is looking to prohibit all parking in bike lanes. So that will prohibit some of those. When we have a multimodal city and a sidewalk that we're trying to build and having that, keep in mind, you talked about carpooling and getting a van, but we have free public transportation from all over the valley. And I have ridden the bus that goes right through there to work. So I have ridden that bus and it is not packed. Just telling
Nobody's on it, right?
you. I had my choice of very good spots.
Ryan, my wife and I used to write it too. Made sense.
I-
But that's kind of like, I believe, Councilmember Seeley had said, or maybe Kirk, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
One of you had said something along the lines that this could become real confusing on clients parking there. Well, clients, we don't want them to park there. I don't want patients to park there. It's only for my employees that are fully under my direction to let them know what's at their disposal. When one of our employees received a warning, we realized, well, I need to act on this. And that's when we started this whole movement. So I'm only asking for a variation that me and the people that are involved in this project will know that in the wintertime, they can park there at 8 as opposed to 9. If it's snowing, don't. And I'll let them know that if we violate the standards, we lose our privilege. And I hope that we can continue to park on the street.
If they have to park an in-lot up till 9 o'clock, where are you going to put them?
I haven't crossed that bridge yet, Brent. I've looked at it and I thought, boy, I'm just going to, well, we'll have to push them over to the north parking. I mean, that's all I can do. I mean, or I might have to tell the gals, don't come in till 9. The snow will be cleared by then. And there are times it's snowy enough that we tell our employees to stay home. If the schools are closed, a lot of these employees have to stay home with their kids.
What is that a flood control that's there on the north end? Is
This
that what that
one
is?
here?
Yeah.
I think it's a detention basin.
I think it's a detention basin also, Ryan. The way it's sloped no, I believe so, to capture the water so it doesn't fill the sewage systems. Or stormwater systems, forgive me.
I hope it's not going in the sewer.
Especially after the sewer challenges that we talked about 2 months ago.
Yeah. Okay. Further comments? Are we ready to vote on this? Do we want to do some more
Another
studying?
question. So, are we voting, like, are we making like a spot adjustment? Like, we shouldn't do that, right? I mean, if we make it,
It's for the whole commercial district.
yeah,
Zone.
okay, so it's all commercial.
It's a zone
Well, it would be the whole,
exemption
all of Providence. Whatever
for
we
that zone.
do, anyone who has a zone that's commercial,
Yes.
that's
okay.
what this would cover.
Your choices are to approve, disapprove, or modify. I mean, you could modify it so it is this street. If you wanted to do that, it becomes confusing at that point for enforcement. But we do have, I mean, when we get to other streets that have other restrictions, this isn't the only parking restriction. So we're talking about a winter parking restriction when the plows are not out. Because when the plows are out, it's a complete restriction. So this is
So when it's snowing at 10 or 11, there's
The plows are
not
out,
supposed to be
it-
anything on the
there's not supposed to
streets,
be anything on the
even
street.
after 9 a.m.,
after 9 a.m. doesn't matter.
right? Yeah.
That's correct. That is part of your
But if there's
ordinance.
no snow and
If there's no
there's
snow,
still no parking on the streets,
there's
between
still no
those
parking
dates.
between that period of time. Yeah,
right? There's just no parking on the streets.
Have to
between
be
1
8 feet
and
off the
yeah,
asphalt.
between 1 and 9, except for around the schools. That's the current one. Yes. And then if there's actively snowing and the plows are out, then it's prohibited. All on-street parking is prohibited.
But right now, we're just kind of
But he's asking to move.
allowing the parking on the street.
He
for
wants
now.
the same exception that the schools have, he wants the same variation to the ordinance that the schools are the schools have received that are on larger and striped parking. So, but that's the same, correct? I don't want to put more words, but that's basically what we're asking, right? The same time frame that schools have, which is 8 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
And I guess a problem I would see with that then would be that the schools have 100% priority to be
Plowed.
first to be plowed,
Currently,
where
they
you
do.
have a dead end is going to be, or at least as
Gonna be
currently
last on the
last
list.
priority.
Yeah.
Looking at the map, and I'm not sure if I'm seeing it well. I'm trying to adjust to my glasses still. It looks like, and I know that's just a snapshot in time, but the vehicles parked on the road there could be in the lots, correct?
Yes.
We counted those up. I've driven through there at times and I don't know what your busiest time is. I've gone at random times and seen generally about 20 on the road and generally about mid-30s parking inside the lot. And I assume there's a lot of people coming and going, as I've had appointments over there and you're in for a while and you're out. And so it's a fluid thing. I understand. What do you think your busiest time is? Or that would, you feel like necessitate this? Is it virtually all day or?
My building, the west parking lot of my building, all day. The center general parking between the middle area between the 4 buildings, all day. this picture respectfully is not the best. It's not as current as now that the Ogden Clinic is open. There's just more people in our community that are coming in for help. And so we're faced with caring for our clients, patients, and having it available for our employees.
It's another type of safety, I guess, too, right? Safety of your clients in these buildings, but
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
Of these business owners, this is a strange winter. You know, we've got like hardly any snow. It's very strange compared to the last 2 winters where we've been driving through the luge, basically, right? So much snow. Comparing, I mean, do you continue to try to park on the street when the snow banks are piled 6 feet high?
No.
You find a place in
The
the lot?
minute, so let me be clear.
Like
When the street is open, we'll park on the street. We did last year.
with the
Because it's-
accumulation on the sides, it didn't pose an issue
No,
to your employees?
no. Yeah, from my understanding, street parking was allowed after 9. So we just typically do it.
Okay. The accumulation of the snow didn't cause
Was
an
not a
obstacle.
problem.
Because we would have been able to get it on the park strip. That's where we want it to be, so that it can be accessible. We just need access to that park strip when we're plowing.
Well, and before Ogden Clinic was open, they used to come and plow and pile it up on the West Park Strip over onto the sidewalk. And I thought, my goodness, that's not going to work as everything fills up. So
Then the commercial business is supposed to take it off the sidewalk.
okay.
Sorry, we try our best.
That's a lot of snow. When I look over there, it's as big as what you'd see at Albertsons.
That's why you gotta have a park strip.
Speak of that, when your lot is plowed in a snowstorm, where do you put your snow?
On the other side of the curb where the trees are. Push it right along in here, and then they have been taking it away if it gets too high.
Hauling it out?
But correct, it has been a comfortable winter, but we will regret it this summer.
It will be an uncomfortable summer.
Yeah, it certainly will be.
Okay. Questions, comments? Is anybody ready to make a recommendation?
No, come on, give us something.
Can I still make a comment?
Yes. State your name.
Yeah, so I'm Richard Johnson. I was here just previously, but and I guess along with that, to me, this seems like the way this discussion is going is more towards whether there should even be parking on the street, right? Rather than moving it from 9 to 8. Like right now, the way the ordinance sits, we can at least park on the street right now at 9 o'clock. And I guess until that ordinance is rewritten to not allow us to park on the street, it seems like, I guess, what would be the hindrance or the downfall from the city's perspective of moving it from 9 to 8, I guess? Like what's the
It's to get it,
necessity there?
is to get it plowed,
Yeah.
was why we made the initial recommendation for that time frame. If it's snowing actively and the plows haven't been around, then there is no parking.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And we'll be
that's-
ticketed, and our plow drivers typically have to try to make phone calls to get people to move their cars because they park them and then we can't get it
Sure.
plowed.
And understandable. And we understand that as well, as far as being able to actually get the, but when there's no snow or things that way, I guess as far as in a commercial district, and I don't know what the snowplow routes are. I would assume that in a commercial district, it would be plowed before residential, but maybe not. I'm not sure on that.
Sometimes not, actually, because we do based on slope. The slope plays a big part. Traffic volume, the classification of the road plays a big part. We try to get everywhere, but keep in mind, in a winter like this, you probably don't have the sun coming and warming until 9 o'clock. I mean, we're 9 o'clock is a fairly good time period because it starts to be the sun comes out. Our mountains are close to us, and for us to be able to plow and to get that, sometimes it's not plowing. Oftentimes, we've had our plows out more times than people may know because we have put sand out. We've put hundreds of tons of sand out this year, or salt out this year, because of the slickness of the road. Although it didn't actually have measurable, what people look at as measurable snowfall, but it still required us to be out to take care of and manage those roads. And the slickest times are the early mornings. And so the later we can push it, the safer we can make you.
Okay.
I
Well,
didn't-
thanks.
Can I interject one comment there?
Thank you.
School routes, where the buses is also a priority,
Yeah, we take those things into account.
and also our collectors, or our major access roads to town, because they soon ice over if you don't get those taken care of. And so you find that the residential area does, like your cul-de-sacs and that does get pushed off. But there again, the plow drivers, especially if you have a continuous, reasonable snowfall, you have to keep going over certain roads to keep them open. The one time over, it's not like it's all done, and of course you understand that. And so you have to keep going over certain roads and leave others to last. And so that's the priorities that have been established. We have routes that have been designated as access routes and school bus routes and stuff like that that are taken care of on a higher priority than such as getting into cul-de-sacs and stuff like that.
Thank you. So our decision tonight is, do we want to stay with what we decided initially? Or are we willing to say, because we're not dealing with whether or not they should park on the road tonight. That's not what we're talking about. So do we want to say, we want to support our businesses, and as long as it's not actively snowing and the plows don't have to get out, can they
Yeah, I'll just comment that.
start parking there at 8 o'clock?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
My opinion is that if there's no snow, the 8 a.m. on that straightaway doesn't bother me. Cars in the cul-de-sac anytime, that kind of bothers me. Just not being able to move around in that cul-de-sac. But just on the straightaway, if there's no snow, 8 a.m., 9 a.m., I don't see any problem with that, and it's supporting our businesses. But if there's any hint of snow, I think everyone in that business section needs to be aware that they shouldn't be on the street anytime if there's any hint of snow. But no snow, if it supports them, then 8 a.m. versus 9 a.m., no snow doesn't bother me at all. And we're supporting our businesses that are part of our community. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Motion, I'll second it.
That's my motion.
Brent has a comment. We'll take Brent's comment.
The reason I ask what you do with your employees, because if your employees are taking up your parking lot, where's your business people going to go? Your clientele, the people that are coming, they're going to park on the street. They don't understand the ordinances of the city. So if your parking lot's full of your employees from that 8 to 9, they're going to park out there. So it's a catch-22. Somebody's going to be parking out there because they don't know that they can't because of Providence City ordinances.
Good point.
May I approach the bench? I request my employees park on the street. But according to the standards, if it's right now, they'll get a warning if they're there before 9.
That was his point, I think.
Yeah.
So
that's what we're
the
dealing with
employees are
tonight.
there, yeah, I'm sorry, Mayor.
That's okay. We're not dealing with whether or not they can park on the street. Right now, we're talking about what time they can park.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that was my comment.
Yeah.
My
I
comment
misunderstood.
was, if it's snowing and your employees show up at 8 o'clock, you have to take care of your employees. That's what you're telling us.
Yes, sir.
And so I asked you earlier, where are you going to put them?
Mm-hmm.
If you put them in your parking lot and your clientele starts coming at 8 o'clock and your parking lot's full with your 20 number of people, where are they going to park? They're going to park on the street, not knowing the Providence City ordinance. That's what I'm telling you.
Brian.
But on that note, it is a transient parking that comes and goes and can regularly be moved and done. And it is the tradition of Providence to have transient parking. What he's asking for is to dedicate the street as staff parking, which makes it parking the entire day rather than a transient parking of coming and going. That transient ability on a street allows us to say, hey, you know what, that car is only going to be there for a certain period of time. So let's take for instance that it snows that day, and a transient car is parked there, and they're there for an hour, and then they leave, and we come back and can plow the rick that was left next to those cars, and we can plow that off and clean it up. It's a lot easier to do that when those cars are transient and moving throughout the day than if they are there from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. when our crew has gone home because they were up at 4 o'clock. And we can't stay from 4 o'clock, and we can't stay and then clean up at 6 o'clock when they go home. We can clean it up during the day before it's hardened. And at that point, transient, I would say if you can do it, the idea of having it transient doesn't really bother me to move from 9 to 8. But the problem is if you're having that as an official parking stall, you now can't get cleaned up that rick because that car is there the entire time where it's not moving. It's not giving us an opportunity. Now, if that's a temporary spot that they come, they stay, and they leave, then at that point, the next person isn't going to park right where the rick's at. They're going to park where it's been cleaned.
And I just thought your point, Brent, was that if all these businesses have their employees park on the street and it does happen to start snowing, they can send the text and have every car removed like that because they're in control of those cars. And if they need to say, okay, everyone go out, move them, they're gone. But if they're the transient, is that what you call them?
That's what I called it.
Cars that are
Temporary.
that's a lot harder to get a bunch of random cards off the road. But if you guys as a business have this process to just, they're your employees and you can say, let's get all these moved right now. It's starting to snow. I don't know how you're going to do that or where you're going to put them, but you can have them moved quickly versus a bunch of random people.
Yeah, and they'll be moved over to the far north side.
Yeah, and I'm just saying you'd be able to move them, but we're talking about if it's not snowing, then there's no problem.
What time do your customers start coming?
Around 9.
Okay.
And then the doctor's office is open at 8.
Yeah.
Isn't that correct? If it was starting to snow, all of you could get together and
Yeah.
I
have
could
them all
understand
moved
that.
quickly. but-
You could move them quickly. Okay. So we have nothing in the ordinance about transient parking. Do we need to include transient parking in the ordinance? Because our ordinance says 1 to 9, no parking.
That's right. That's what
It
says.
doesn't talk about whether the car
That
is
is.
transient or whether it's an employee or whoever, it talks about parking, unless I'm misunderstanding something.
That's what it says.
Okay, then it sounds like to me, if we're going to approve something, we've got to put something, if we want to allow transient parking on this street from 8 to 9 and permanent parking after 9, this ordinance isn't going to cut it unless we modify it.
I don't think that's enforceable, Brent.
No, it's not.
I agree, 100%. I didn't bring up the term transient.
Yeah.
Well,
I would argue that it's
I mean,
it's
the code,
enforceable and is enforced in Salt Lake all the time with a 2-hour limit and
meter.
with a parking meter or a 2-hour parking limit or a 1-hour parking limit. It's enforced all the time.
I don't see the transient portion of it. We got an ordinance. And are we gonna stick with the ordinance? Are we gonna allow all our commercial areas to park on the street starting at 8 o'clock?
Okay, we're not talking about parking on the street tonight. What we're dealing with tonight is whether we go from 9 o'clock back to 8 o'clock to let them park there. Now, if we want to deal with whether or not they can park on the street, that's a whole different story.
Well, changing that time changes the parking position on this street we're talking about. Because it allows them to start parking at 8 o'clock instead of requiring 9. Now, I'm talking about a street.
Mhm.
Of course, if they park in their parking lot, no, we're not worried about that. But if they're on the street, that's what we're concerned about. So we are talking about parking on the street from changing it from 9 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be discussing this.
Right. But the ordinance that we're talking about is just about
9 to 8.
9
9
to
to
8. That's it.
But
And that's
in
only if-
reference to what? Our streets.
Right.
So the reference is referring to the streets, not about private driveways, not about private parking lots, not about private anything. We're talking about the city-owned streets.
Right.
And so if we do that, we've got to consider all commercial areas can park on the street starting at 8 o'clock. Because it's hard to do for you anything different than what we do for all the rest of the commercial areas.
Right.
I personally think myself, I just think this ought to be, we need to review this very carefully, the broad spectrum of ramifications that's going to take place if we do this. Now, that's my opinion, because I personally think it ought to be tabled. We need to take a look at how much ramifications it's going to have across our city. That's my thoughts.
And it's only 8 a.m. parking if there's no snow. Right.
This doesn't say no snow.
So can
Well-
I make a motion?
Well, Ryan, what were you?
I was just going to say it is the other piece of the law is it's unlawful to park or leave parked any vehicle upon the paved portion of the street while snow plows are operating or while streets are snow or ice covered. I think that's where the snow's coming. I think that's where that's currently in it.
Okay. Then it does reference snow.
If there's any hint of snow,
Snow or ice.
no ice, yeah, no parking on the street anytime. But this is just, if there's no snow, if we have no snow, then 8 a.m., there's no problem with that. That's what we're trying to change, right? 9 to 8, park, no snow.
Okay, you're going to
So,
make a motion then?
I'll make a motion that we accept ordinance 23-2024-PCC 6-2-8, winter parking amendment. As it's been described in this application, that the winter parking be moved from 1 a.m. to 8 a.m. And just a comment that if there is any hint of snow, there would be no parking on this street
Or in the commercial district at all.
or in any
On the street.
commercial district part in the city. So
Okay.
8 a.m. parking is permitted in the commercial district when there is no snow.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. Further discussion?
I want further discussion just for one thing. I feel like we've beat a dead horse. But I did come into this discussion thinking that I would vote against it because I'm not in favor of using streets as a parking lot. Streets are meant for driving. But with it just being the 1 hour, and we've already beat this dead horse, actually. It's been beat multiple times.
Yes.
Super. Super beat to death. But when we were talking about, we were worried about this restriction for businesses and for the schools. When we put it into place, we decided to make the schools an exception. I see reason to make businesses an exception, but I do think businesses need to be looking for long-term parking solutions that are not the road because it's not going to last.
Okay.
And probably not just winter, but summer too, as we start with street sweeping and there's more and more traffic. But I think that 1 hour is reasonable to support businesses.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye. Are you calling for opposed?
I am.
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, Janelle, you just put yourself in a bad spot.
No, I didn't. He's in the same spot as I am.
He just voted nay.
Oh, I didn't hear him.
They both said it. Aye, but I think they meant to say nay.
Yeah.
The opposite.
Nay, aye, whatever.
Nay's the opposite.
Nay
I know, I'm the
is
split
aye.
vote. I feel like I have the exact same sentiments that Carrie has. I just don't see that as the long-term solution, but I also think with like the clear understanding, like any snow at all, you're gonna get ticketed. Any snow at all.
Amen to that.
You would get ticketed, which I feel like is something that last winter, people just did not get that if it's still snowing, it doesn't matter what the clock is. It's still restricted.
We still have
Doesn't matter
plows
if it's
out.
2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's restricted because if there's any active snow, you're gonna get a ticket. So,
But 8 to 9.
but 8 to 9, it does seem like reasonable to make an exception for businesses to me. Because I feel like that's the spirit of the law we were trying to write initially. So I'll say aye.
So your vote is yes on this.
Yes.
Okay. So we have 3 for, 2 against, and the motion passes. Thank you. But we want to encourage you to look for other parking solutions so that we don't have cars on the street, especially that one. That one is quite narrow. And especially with people that are parking down around the turnaround down there. So, okay. So we go on to our third item. And
The turnaround is not allowed.
so tell your people. So this third item is our new justice court. All of you are aware that Matt Funk, about almost a year ago, resigned because he was running for county auditor, and he is currently county auditor. So we've had Matt Loers filling in for that time period. And we opened it up. We interviewed how many people?
We had 7 applicants, I think, and so we interviewed 7 as a committee.
Okay.
And narrowed those down for you to choose from.
So we had 7. There were 4 that were selected from that 7, and Matt Loers rose to the top. Matt has been filling in, Matt Loers, and so I wasn't part of the committee to interview, but I interviewed him today and feel good that he is on board with who we are and what we do. We had good communication about what our plans are as a city, and we made commitments to have some quarterly meetings so that he can raise any issues that have come up that he sees of people being ticketed or whatever in the city, and what we might be able to do to solve those issues. Communication is key. And so I wanted to present him to you tonight. I wanted you to meet him and him to meet you. And so you've heard from everybody. But I will give you a moment, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about your background and what you've done in the past and what you are currently doing.
Sure. And I'm sorry, I can't get you out at 7 o'clock tonight. I don't take responsibility for that, though. I think I'll start by saying that I'm not as bad as what everybody says I am. I'm not as good as I am. But I'm doing my best.
Well played, well played.
He was listening.
I was. No, I appreciate the opportunity. It's honestly been a pleasure to work the last 10 months or so with the city and providing the assistance while you have to go through that lengthy process to hire a new judge. I appreciate Ty and all that he does for the courts as well. I'm Matt Loers. I'm not originally from the Valley, but I came out here to Utah State, so I'm a big Aggie fan, and so I will get us home before the Aggie.
9 o'clock.
Yes, absolutely. I have more gray in my beard because of their recent games. Actually, they've been very stressful, but I love the Valley, and so when we had the opportunity, my wife is here with me, Mary Ann. She's definitely the better part of me, and so we loved the opportunity to come back to the Valley. And even though I grew up as a city boy, I now do own a pair of cowboy boots. But I'm not as country as my boy Daniel, who I believe you may know as well. So, but I practiced law for over a decade as a full-time attorney. And then it gets harder as you start doing justice court judges for conflicts and things like that. So I've kind of stepped away from the law practice full-time. I still do it part-time, but I also do some work for the Utah State Board of Education. And so, yeah, but I love it. I love working with people. I love our community. We have a really good bar, really good attorneys that I take pride in. You look at other areas of the state or other states as well, you don't have as good of working relationships as what I see here in the Valley with the prosecutors, with defense attorneys, and everybody's doing their role. And I love doing my role as a judge. So I'm honored to even be considered, honestly, and I appreciate this time to be here. But
He's currently doing work for Wellsville
yes,
and
yep,
for us.
yep, and North Logan Hyde Park.
So we're just looking
For
to make it official.
So
Did you want to fill us in on anything, Marianne?
there's no bias there.
Oh, we realize that. Do any of you want to ask him any questions?
I just want to say thank you for helping us, stepping in and helping us over the last 10 months. It was really helpful for us and our residents. So I'm happy to make a motion to accept Judge Lortz as our justice court judge. What's his full name?
Matthew.
Lortz?
Yep.
Matthew Lortz.
So, okay, we need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second. Further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? See, that wasn't nearly as hard, was it?
You didn't even have to beat that double.
We will
I know
go
everybody
home
just
by
wants to
9
watch the
o'clock.
Aggies, but I'm okay with that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So we'll go through the rest of the process that we need to do, and who's it, Peterson, I think that. Yeah. So, okay. So we'll close that portion. Thank you for being patient and sitting through. Good night. So we have staff reports. And we've whittled it down so Ryan does them all.
Yes. So Scarlett is out, new baby, new grandbaby for
Just
her.
this morning?
We're excited. So she was able to make it back to North Carolina, right? Yes, North Carolina. And so we're happy that we can have a good enough culture that allows for grandmas to go and help their little new grandbabies. So thank you for that, and thank you for your willingness to let us be able to do that. I just, sidewalks has always been has been such a conversation, and we are working as a staff. We've sent this out to some select group, our planning commission, our historic preservation, and the city council. But here is a map of our sidewalks. There's three things that are going on here really. We're working to create this as an interactive survey that we'll be able to send out to residents. So we're working on that. But as we start, we want to help educate, and we want to help to have some identity of what's happening here. In the dark gray are the volume of sidewalks that we have. So we have 89% of all cities, all public streets inside of Providence, 89% have a sidewalk, at least on one side. That's huge. I don't know many cities that have that volume.
I was just curious, do you get that percentage by measuring feet,
Yes.
doing that
Yes.
division in math?
Yes.
Wow.
Loves that.
He loves spreadsheets.
Yeah, that's incredible. I was
Actually,
my
so
council report,
Col-
but wow.
Colton was able to do that through the GIS system. So please don't give me credit for that. Colton, our GIS specialist, but yes, measured. And I can get it to the 2 decimal places for you.
I can tell you that he massaged everything to make
Yeah,
it
that
work.
Colton just wasn't the only eyes on it.
But 89, a little over 89%. That's amazing for us. It has taken 100 years to get here. We started almost 100 years ago in implementing sidewalks in Providence, and after 100 years, we're at 89%. We do not have a sidewalk to nowhere. There is none. We have a puzzle, and you can see as you do puzzles, you do the outside of the puzzle, those straight edges. You'll see that most areas around are done on our outside. A lot of pieces of the puzzle have come together. We have identified, with working with the school's community council, the application which you've already discussed numerous times on First East from Center Street. Ultimately, the application was to try to get to 4th. We'll probably get to 3rd, but that's one. So the purple is ones that have been applied for and funded. So we have in this, UDOT has awarded us nearly $700,000 to put in sidewalks over the next 3 years, between the one we've gotten and the one that will come up in 2026, which is on 2nd East from 2nd North to 2nd South, which will connect it. And then we've met with the community council again to have a third option. I think you were there, right? Yeah.
Well, not the community council, but just you and I.
Oh, yeah. Who was with me with the community council?
can't
You were there with the community council. Yes. We met. And yes. Okay. So we met with the community council. They identified a few more.
Too many of us.
Yeah. Janelle was on the previous community council, and I knew it wasn't her, but Jeff was there and Mayor was there when we met with them.
I pulled up to that meeting, but I was outnumbered, so I left.
Well, appreciate you there.
We didn't have a quorum there.
I don't want to be in trouble.
But we had some good talks. We've identified some through there. I've gotten some communication back through the committees and some discussion for other ones that we talked about. There is some that are steep that we may not be able to get. Eck Hill is an extremely steep one. The Dugway, the First East Dugway to Canyon Road is steep. And so we've bought some property to pull off of a trail off the side. But but I would say, I mean, when we come towards budget, and we'll starting that this year, but as we look at this, we are within, maybe within some of your terms of seeing a completed puzzle, at least a lot of it. The potential there is significant, and if we wanted to finish this puzzle, we could. I think some of it should be resident driven. If they want a sidewalk in front, we should increase our grant budget to be able to put in more sidewalks where residents are actively wanting it in front of their spot. We should look at where we can connect. So anyway, this is coming. We're trying to work to get it to a survey grade spot so we can send it out and get more of that feedback right on the map. So that's probably coming. We're working on it, but we'd like to get more feedback. And so as you look at it, I've sent this map out to all of you. As you look at it, please feel free to write those down and give us some thoughts. Another thing just to report on is the lift station, the sewer lift station. We awarded that to Geneva as we talked about at our last council meeting. We have worked with them and have identified a little cost savings here and there. And so we've awarded that project just over $1 million for the lift station and the force main line to connect into ours. So R&O will finish their piece. But you should be aware that with both of these projects, 1700 South would be closed for a portion of time. And for ours, it will be closed on both sides. Ours is 300 South. So on both sides of Highway 165, there will be a time before May that both sides of that will have times of closure. That is one of our busiest streets. We realize it is busy. We are wanting to let you know in advance. We'll try to get our social media out, but just want to let you know that as you get questions, what that project is. And the first one is the gravity one from what Grant Johnson's doing to bring Blackstone to the lift station. And the next project will be to take a force main, a pressurized sewer line to the corner by Zions Bank. So between now and the end of May, both of those projects should complete and close those roads for periods of time. We'll have notice and things like that, but just so that you're aware. Yeah.
When it gets up to the Zions Bank car wash corner, will it make a turn there? Are you going to go diagonally through the intersection?
We'll come through the intersection, and then we'll have to put a new manhole right basically in the middle of that intersection. That's why it'll have to be closed, because we'll put a new manhole there.
They're already diagonal
Yeah.
trenches through there.
There's already things going
Road.
right.
And
Storm.
widened it. There is a diagonal trench through there because we were getting irrigation water down there, so we watched that pretty carefully to make sure that it.
So it won't come diagonal through it, but it will bore across it, not straight diagonal. But it'll bore through it, and we'll put a new manhole about in the center of that third south by Zions Bank. We'll put in another manhole that'll tie into, and then gravity from there.
Gravity from that manhole.
Correct.
To the north.
That will end the force main. Yep. So anyway, but if you have questions, let us know. And if there are things that come up, we just want the public and the council to be aware that that's coming in the next couple of months. So anyway, if water company doesn't aware or whatever, we think everybody's been contacted, but if they aren't, please reach out.
Yeah, I've mentioned it to them and told them to keep an eye on it. I mean, I don't think we need to call them every time we have a concern. They need to be
if they're signed up
proactive.
for Blue Stakes, they'll get called every time
That's
within
right.
72
There you
hours. So they'll get lots of calls every time they want it. So I have sent out to the mayor, commission, boards and commissions our general plan. It is one of my goals in order to align and better help people to understand what the general plan is. And I've met with all the staff. We read through the key initiatives and each one of the objectives. I have challenged each staff member to go back and to evaluate how their job supports and builds to that general plan. And we're working on that. Ask the boards and commissions do the same to kind of evaluate where that's at. The thought is if we spend this year to make sure that we are all very aware with those key initiatives and objectives, that there's a chance that we would open that up, and if things work out, that in the next, not this year but next year, we could work on that and see if there's updates. But it does take a lot of time to prep, so I think we would prep this year for that potential. So be in mind, read that. We're going to see if we can't do some things to really make sure that that's known what it is, and as we educate and build on that, then as we get to the point of opening it up, then we'll have more ability of what it is rather than just accepting what it has been. So anyway, kind of being proactive before we actually get there. So anyway, Hillcrest Park. What's that? Sorry.
Janelle has a question.
Oh, sorry. Stop.
I know we've done a lot of capital projects with our master plans, and I know our initial starting place is the general plan, and then that funnels to the master plans.
That's correct.
Do you anticipate that domino continuing if we open the general plan?
Yes.
Okay.
That domino will continue. Because we have done because we've done such a good job. Now we'll have 1 year before the general plan might be open. The general plan will probably be open for 2 years. It'll take us probably 2 years to go through that plan, which would then put us on track to start through some of our master plans. I don't expect that we'll go through our master plans at the same pace at which we did, but we were catching up from a period of time. So
And we have a good 3 years worth of capital projects left. In those plans.
yeah, we have a good 3 to 5 years. I mean, we have 20 years of capital projects, but we've achieved some of the intermediate ones. We will have achieved several in the sewer, between the sewer expansion to the west and the 1200 at the 12th South one. We'll achieve most of those. We've achieved quite a bit in the water. We've achieved quite a bit in the streets. And over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll achieve more. And so as we get to those, we'll have them in sync as we pick them up. So you'll probably only do one a year rather than 5 all in 2 years. So we'll probably not
Rip off the
cram it up,
Band-Aid, just
but-
get her done.
Yeah, it takes its time and it flows. But anyway,
The
just
wheels
kinda
of
give you-
government do not turn quickly.
Yeah. So I'm trying to give you the next 3 to 5 year outlook of being on the council and your next term. This kind of things we're looking for. So we try to keep a 1 to 5 year outlook on what we're doing. So anyway, one thing, Hillcrest Park, I know, I realize that it is not as high in the list of our park and recreation master plan items, but it is probably the next park to work on. And so my goal is to start in the grant writing process in hopes that maybe this year or next year we could start to get funding to build towards the eventual putting in and finishing the Hillcrest Park. We have 2 grants between now and end of March that will be our first goes at that. Generally, we don't get it. A lot of times we don't get it on the first try. So we start domino into what that is. So, but anyway, that's on the horizon to be able to work on. And so anyway, we're still doing well in our garbage, our sewer, is flowing. But we are working with Logan to get more capacity, and that should come by the end of next year. So anyway, there you go. There's the staff report. Anything you would like to know or things we could answer for you?
Ty, did you have anything?
No.
Okay.
I love
That's a good answer. Thank you.
Just make one quick comment.
Yes.
They got 40 million for that, what'd you call it? Not LTD, what is it called? Connect. Why couldn't we double that and get a sewer plant?
I'd like to.
Let's do that.
Janelle's job.
Yeah.
We talked about it.
Okay, let's do it.
About it.
Did you?
Thank you for priming that pump.
Right.
We'll visit later and see how well we can.
Just trying to sharpen the pencil and see what actually works. And pencil wasn't nearly sharp enough. and costs just continue to escalate. But when a city like Preston has to spend $40 million, I don't know where they got $45 million. I have no idea, to build their sewer plant. We might have to wait a little bit.
Well, ultimately, our rates will pay for a sewer treatment plant. Whether we pay for our own or we pay for Logan's, we will pay for one. It is assured and guaranteed that we will pay for a sewer treatment plant. There's no question about it.
And they have upcharges on theirs.
And they will make a administrative and profit to it. And that's fair for them to do. I mean, that's what we'd do if we were in the reverse. But there is no question that we will pay for a sewer treatment plant. The longer we wait, the more costly it will be. But the problem today is if we were to go into it and build it, it would be a large rate increase today with very minimal increases over time, or we can have large increases or less increases over time, but ultimately we're
to the
going
same
to pay for
place.
it. In the end, we will pay for it. To be subject to another entity and their price. Keep in mind, almost 70% of our rate on our sewer rate is due to Logan's treatment. 70%. I think it's actually 67%. If you look at it, 67% of our rate is determined by Logan.
So what do we pay Logan a year?
$1 million.
What's that?
$1 million probably.
For sewer treatment?
I'd have to look, but it's pretty close. Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark. But we also pay impact fees to them, and we've probably paid them $1.5 million plus in impact fees over the last 2 years.
In addition to the
In
million.
addition to the treatment.
Which still looks like 30 years built up. I guess my question about sewer is, we made our first stab at kind of what we thought we might need. But we didn't really have enough information to get like an exact bid. We got enough information to get in a ballpark, right?
Well, they could
Yeah,
only,
the feasibility study versus the engineered drawing. So our
Design,
next step
yeah,
would be
yeah.
going to an engineered design and getting a 60% design. I mean, that's the next step would be getting a 60% design to flush out what possibilities are. That's our first kind of
You've-
concept to design.
In the grant writing world, do you feel like taking that next step is worth it for us to fund in order to be more successful in drawing in more resources to make this happen?
that was one of the reasons that I wanted to see if John Curtis had come to this meeting, because now that John Curtis is in there, what's his name? Lee. Mike Lee will not give us any federal money. But John Curtis, I have had some conversations with him about, and some conversations with Blake Moore. Blake doesn't have access to the funds that the senators do. And so I'm hoping that we can if we can get enough information, that we might be able to get some federal dollars in here to do that.
So I just don't understand why Mike Lee doesn't want to support the communities in Utah.
I think
he
it's an
doesn't wanna
earmark
spend
issue
money.
of budget and earmark. He has a different philosophy of earmarks than others, and so. Did you
But
say
if-
they were mandating housing?
The state government
state.
is,
State,
yeah.
and so wouldn't they need to support the sewage for those homes also?
Well, that's where
in a
we're
way.
headed with it.
If you're gonna mandate housing, then it seems like you should
Work on the infrastructure.
Yes.
help the cities with the sewer too.
So I
So-
do have conversations with the people at the league about that kind of thing. I continue to talk about that, but it's kind of like you have to build the scenario and keep the dialogue going. But the federal government has a ton of money, and somebody's going to get it. So we may as well have somebody in there that's going to give some to Utah, because Mike Lee refuses to do that. But just because we fall on our sword in Utah doesn't mean the other people are going to do that. So we'll just keep working on it. But I have opened the conversation with those legislators
Good.
and opened the conversation with the people at Utah League. So we just have to keep building it.
We're certainly looking for opportunities and grants. If there's a point in time that any one of you find a opportunity or something, you say, hey, this might be for that project, certainly send it our way. We have
We did get economic development money
we did
for
to
the lift
get
station.
lift station and the expansion.
Right.
But it's hard for us to justify leaving a sewer treatment plant that we are connected to have our own in economics, because at that point they're looking and saying, well, that's the same economics, yes, but for a resident to have our own is a bit more of a control and planning issue, a proactive control and planning issue, but it's not necessarily when the scales are weighed. I don't know the economics development will say, oh, you should have a plant or not, and you still have a place for sewer to go. So, but as a city and as residents, we will pay for a treatment plant. We are paying for a treatment plant. We just don't get ownership at the end.
Well, and
It's like garbage. I mean, that's the reason we got into our own garbage trucks.
right. I just think that, if we have a definitive area, so a treatment plant that we build would be a definitive item. And if we stick with Logan, as the valley expands, we're going to pay for it, our portion of it, because they're gathering all the north end and continuing in Nibley and so forth. It won't Millville because they're going to Hiram. But my thoughts are we're going to continue to pay for the valley-wide expansion of the sewer system. I wish there was a way.
But there are also possibilities that some of those cities would come with us too, like Nibley.
Oh, that they would participate. That's a thought.
So
Yeah.
anyway, John Drew, our former mayor, is here. So
I have a quick question of Ryan. So the discussion earlier was paying impact fees to Logan City, and that's to accommodate expansion as our city and other cities are growing, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we're giving, and the other cities are giving money to Logan to build and maintain the additional capacity, right? As our city grows in other cities. So are we correspondingly charging development and developers impact fees that
Yes.
essentially end up flowing through the fund the growth, whether it's our wastewater treatment plant or Logan City's?
Yes.
We are charging developers and development as it happens to fund that additional capacity. Whether
Yes,
it's Logan City or whether it's here, right?
that is correct.
Okay.
But
So-
we gain no ownership
Right.
in that. So unlike most, in fact, every other impact fee that we collect or utilize is utilized to build infrastructure for our side. This one is a collected and passed through so that Logan can build their infrastructure, which at this point they're already telling me the plant is at capacity.
Right. And
The brand new plant.
That's correct.
in state code, the theory is that existing residents should not be paying for growth. That's what impact fees are for. They are collected so that the city can add a road out to a new development or put in street, sewer lines or wastewater treatment. Is that
I
right?
would say impact fees are used for growth and expansion. I would say that it is not accurate to assume that no resident fee or user fee would also be used for expansion. So I would say, yes, impact fees have to be used that way.
I mean,
but-
that's the theory. It doesn't always work perfect.
Yeah,
but
there you go.
Okay. I do know, and this goes way back, once upon a time, I know we had the engineers come out, not when I was mayor, but way before. Engineers came out, did their study, the financial people crunched the numbers. And there was an impact fee, and I don't remember the numbers right now, but the council at the time said the impact fee to build that road, to add to city streets here in the city to accommodate development on a per lot basis was so high, the council said, pick a number, it's like $2,200 or something. The council said, we think it's too high. And they charged made it $500 instead. So the city residents in that instance were actually subsidizing growth and development. But now the rest of the side of the code is we can't charge more for impact fees than what development.
Yeah, yes, but,
So-
and I assume this is all still part of my report, that's the agenda item we're on, right?
Yes.
Okay. But yes, that's correct. But the limitation of a 6-year, sometimes growth, it has taken us longer than 6 years to get prepared for growing a well. It's taken us longer than 6 years to prepare for putting in a tank. It's taken us longer than 6 years to do some projects, and the impact fees can only be collected for a 6-year period of time. So there is some major restrictions on it. So that's why I say yes in theory, but in practice, oftentimes, if the impact fee isn't high enough, like for instance, our impact fee was approved 2-3 years ago, something for the sewer one. Costs have tripled. That impact fee probably isn't enough. Now what are we going to do? Now we can go through an impact fee analysis. By the time we get through the impact fee analysis and all of that, a lot of our growth will be built. But at some point, then we only have a 6-year period of time to use it. So there is a lot of complexity when we talk about impact fees. It's not a simple that pays for growth and user fee pays for current. So anyway,
At the same time, the whole impact fee story ends up being the boogeyman when we're talking about cost of housing and new development for young families. Is that impact fees are so high, and the cities are charging exorbitant rates. I don't know what they do in other states, but in our state, we have statutorily, it's in state code, says you can only charge so much. You can only recover the actual cost of new development. So the city can't arbitrarily come up with what impact rates are. Our rates are going to be different than our sister cities here in
because
the
our
valley.
costs are, you're correct, our costs are actual. That's why we don't make a profit. We can't do more than cost. And generally there's no way to actually get to the theory of having it cover it all.
But we do our best, right?
Yes, we do our best, but you will always see current residential fees subsidized development because you can never keep up with the cost increases. The law just is set against us.
And if
We
6
can't do
years
that.
isn't long enough, that's on
It's
its
not long
side.
enough.
By the time you figure out
Our state senator.
that you're not charging enough, it's too late.
too late. And we can't recoup it. So anyway, but yeah, it's a great theory. It's a great theory. It just,
Okay, we're done with the agenda.
all right.
So I will entertain a motion to
I'll make a motion that we
adjourn.
adjourn.
Okay. Do I need a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for your work.